Yeah, because I have.
Okay.
So if I do
Well,
stop my video, then it at least
okay.
shows my name.
Yeah, it shows your name. Yeah, at least you
Okay.
see your name.
Okay.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to Brainstorming the Human Connection. We had a bit of a technical connection issue this morning, and we're still kind of having it. So we can't see Tawa Ducheneaux, but she's with us, and we're going to get started. Thank you all for joining us. And we have a very interesting conversation today, again. And we're going to be talking about archiving various archivable things that belong to the tribes, are slowly being repatriated, and then how to look at them, collect them, curate them, those kind of things. And I hope that each of you will be listening, and if you have questions, please write them down while we're getting started. And also, if you have comments, if you have experiences, things that you would like to talk about, this is an interactive program. We try to get people to interact and have a conversation between us with someone who has some special knowledge about various subjects. And today, we have Tawa Ducheneaux, who is the archivist at the Oglala Lakota College Archives and Tribal Repository. And they collect cultural, historical, and scientific materials of many different types. And that allows them to document the history and the development and activities that allows them to promote reservation resource-based research. And that allows people to learn more about themselves and then collect it in a way that hopefully in the future, people know more about the historical transition of the peoples curated, whose information is curated in those collections. So welcome, Tawa. How are you today?
I am good. Hello, everybody. I am, we have been troubleshooting for a quarter of an hour or so, and this just seems to be one of those days that we cannot figure it out. So my gosh, I dolled up and put on my favorite earrings, and and
well,
nobody knows.
You look pretty good anyway. It's just that you're not moving very much, You seem a little stiff on that picture, but
apparently.
Okay, so we'll get started by asking you to kind of give us the 50,000-foot view of who the heck is Tawa anyway.
Hikoni Washte, everyone. Tawa Ducheneaux Dagwadoa. I am a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. I grew up in northeastern Oklahoma and completed my undergraduate degree in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and met my husband there. And we moved up to Pine Ridge, South Dakota. He's a member of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe from Eagle Butte. And we have been here in Pine Ridge for a little over 19 years. We've raised our family here. We have 2 children. My daughter, Chanessa, is in her senior year at Red Cloud Indian School, which was formerly Holy Rosary Mission, the first mission school here in Pine Ridge. And my son, Chetan Shikala, graduated a few years ago, and he is living in Omaha, Nebraska. So I'm getting ready to be an empty nester.
that should feel real different anyway.
It is. And so that's what we're doing. We have lots and lots to do to get ready for her graduation, but we're excited. And I'm really happy to be here today with everyone. And so I began my journey many years ago with some museum experiences while I was an undergraduate at University of New Mexico, witnessing a difficult repatriation that was really new to everyone. This was in the 90s when I think a lot of institutions didn't quite know what to do. They knew they had to disclose inventories to tribes. And so that sat with me. And then I volunteered for a museum in Oklahoma. And I witnessed several things that were really concerning to me in terms of collections care, overall management, and just even general, let alone cultural care of sensitive items. So all of that kind of fueled me to pursue a graduate degree in which I was able to focus entirely on special collections, archives, cultural resources at San Jose State University. I was part of a brand new, never before anywhere in the country, tribal cohort funded by IMLS, Institute of Museum and Library Services. It was a phenomenal experience in which we had the opportunity to have incredible faculty to work with, but who were aware of our cohort and wanted to learn from all of us, because I was the only one from this region. Many of the students were from our California natives, Alaska natives, and some from the Southwest and Northeast. It was really amazing. And so we all got to work together to also offer educational experiences and perspectives to the faculty, to the classes that we were working within, because we did a lot of group work within those classes, and we supported each other as a cohort. It was really an amazing experience. And so I completed that degree several years ago. And I have been in charge of, I was in the archives in the early 2000s when I first started at OLC, came back to it in a permanent position 12 years ago. And so we've been doing a lot of work. And if you have a chance to look at our website, we're really proud of where we have come, because I talked about digital collections for a long time, and it seemed like it was just something I was speaking to, and no one was seeing anything. So finally, we have a terrific platform within our LibGuides. And so you can get a better sense of some of the special collections that we have.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the Oglala Lakota Archives and Tribal Repository.
Okay. I will say, so Oglala Lakota College celebrated its 50th anniversary, unfortunately virtually, in 2021 in March. And during much of COVID, we were working on the 50th anniversary book. And so I loved that, because I'm the sort of person who does not like to work from home. And so while many folks were working from home at OLC, I was on campus digging through photos and doing the photo work, researching veterans, because that was a significant portion of our 50th anniversary book. So if any of you are interested, we have a beautiful 50th anniversary book that really gives you a sense of the college that you can get from our bookstore. And so that sort of leads into the types of collections that we have. And so Tom Shortwell was, a huge part. He was the one calling me every day, texting, we were meeting, we were going over photos, back and forth. And so in doing that, I really got a good sense of the history, and I knew the history, but I knew it even better after that. So Tom was a visionary in that he supported at least one staff member from 1983 forward to build an archives. And it started in a small room in a basement, and it was largely intended to manage records. And it grew quickly to special collections, and that is the largest component of our collections. And if any of you are able to visit us, or you'd like more information, much of who we are is sort of like a museum. We have diverse and extensive special collections. We have exhibits of objects and artifacts on display. We have all the other things that someone thinks of when they enter an archives, say at SDSU, if you have worked or visited Michelle Christensen there, phenomenal archivist, by the way. You can see those display cases of Tom Dashiell's donations, which include gifts from Oglala Sioux tribe. So those are the types of things that we view, whether it's those fans or headdresses or other materials, all of that we view as knowledge across all forms. So we absolutely do caretake knowledge across many formats. And so it's challenging, but it's exciting. We have rare and hard to find unique publications. We have audio and video that it exists nowhere else. We have records of the college, records of the Oglala Sioux tribe, and we have extensive collections of occupation era newspapers forward. We have, like I say, beautiful artifacts, artwork, objects, maps, blueprints, all the things that might exist in an archives. It's incredibly diverse.
How accessible are those things to the public at this time?
And so we are open at Woksape Teepee. That means that loosely translates to House of Wisdom. Woksape Teepee Library serves Oglala Lakota College, which is decentralized, meaning that much of the instruction by our faculty is across districts, including Rapid City and including Cheyenne River and Eagle Butte. And so we are 13 libraries, including a nursing library that's separate from the main college campus in Pine Ridge. And so our main library, Woksape Teepee, you would walk into the main library. We have approximately 35,000 titles there. The largest collection, the small libraries all house around 2,500 to 3,000 titles. And so we are housed within Woksape Teepee. And you'd walk in and you'd see display cases. You'd see a pretty cool table that was my workaround. We have 6 panoramic photographs that are under glass at a table. And they're not, archivally matted and framed, but what's neat about it is that elders and community members can sit down at that table with a magnifier, a lighted magnifier, and see faces in those panoramic images. And for example, 5 of the 6 were taken during the summer and fall of 1927. And there might be someone in this group that would know why those photographs might have been taken at that time. Anyone?
I don't.
Okay, I see some elders in here, so I just thought perhaps, because this was something that I learned. So that was when Calvin Coolidge visited the reservation. So Rise Studios out of Rapid City, South Dakota came down and photographed Episcopal Convocation. They photographed students at what was Oglala Community School, that is now Pine Ridge School. They photographed students at Holy Rosary. They photographed the doings of when everyone was gathered to meet and entertain, so to speak, but also speak to their concerns with President Coolidge at that time, which was pretty neat. It's not well known. There's a couple articles floating out there in the archives of the New York Times documenting the visit, which he was actually at Pine Ridge for 4 days. And so those photographs are incredibly significant to us, and they came to us from a community member And they're really impressive. They're really, really neat. And they really show, within a short snapshot of time, what a number of folks were doing and, what everyone looked like, what buildings and landscapes behind the individuals look like. One of the photographs, for example, also is a Rapid City Indian School. Students there, since a large number of students from Pine Ridge attended Rapid City Indian School. So we have all those photos under glass at a table right there when you walk in. And so the bulk of the collections are stored safely downstairs with limited access. So from there, I'll let you cut in and see what you think.
Well, actually, I wanted to cut the audience in, our esteemed panel. Do you guys have any questions or comments or experiences that you want to share? Betty?
I haven't. I'm sad to say I have not been on the Pine Ridge. I've come close a couple of times, but weather and other things prohibited me driving through. And I wondered if this library is a noted tourist attraction, or is it kind of a well-kept secret? I made a few quick notes, and I definitely would like to come and spend some time there. Is there an accommodation on the Pine Ridge, like a motel or a rooming house or something like that too, would be another question.
Oh, that's a great question. And it sort of had been a barrier when I first started at the college. I had to direct folks to Martin or Chadron, Rapid City. And we have many authors who have spent extended, say a week straight or something like that with us. And then what we do have now, we did have the Lakota Prairie Ranch right across from us, but it closed during COVID and functioned as housing for individuals, who were testing positive. But the family has built several cabins that they do rent throughout the year. And so there's cabins with different amenities, and I can share that contact info with you. Otherwise,
maybe you can put it in the chat.
Yeah, I can do that.
Anyway, you say otherwise.
And then otherwise, there is Singing Horse, Trading Post, and Porcupine. Rosie was originally from Germany, so she speaks a few languages, so she works really well with our international visitors, many of whom we receive, especially in the summer months. We have a lot of French and German visitors who come to the archives, very, very interested in Lakota culture. And so Singing Horse Trading Post may have accommodations, and that's a really great place. They offer horseback riding and other things. You can sort of make a nice trip out of it. And so I will look up that info and share it with the Lakota Prairie cabins. It sort of shifted from Lakota Prairie Ranch to the cabins. And so there is accommodation right across from us that I hope that you would be able to come to. Otherwise, I would recommend Rapid City if you felt like you wanted to make a loop or a circle this way. And so we're typically open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5, but we do accommodate for visitors as much as we can, because I live close, so I'm really passionate about trying to accommodate those that I know have traveled far to come visit and spend some time with either our manuscript collections or our photograph collections, or listen to our audio.
That sounds wonderful. I also can paint until you open the doors. I like to go plein air painting. Have some friends. We just might have to put together a little group of us and come down there sometime for a few days.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely contact me, and we'll see, especially with a small group, what I can help get set up for you. I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions, comments, queries? Nico?
Yes, I have a question. What kind of, I don't know what you call it, policies or whatever that are part of the archives, what kind of protections or tribal data sovereignty needs are in place for the information that you have been housing? I see that on the Native, I guess it's called Native News Online. I see today they posted an interesting story from the Salish Kootenai and what they're doing to bring the data that they have to a point where it's evolving and using information that's more contemporary. I'd ask that question because as a writer of my own, from my own reservation, I have some concerns about individuals coming in who are not Native people of the reservation or of the tribal entity who exploit a lot of the information for their own use of story collection. And I just wanted to know what OLC has put in place for that.
Good morning, Leniko. Thank you for the question. It is something that is coming across, through phone calls or through communication most days. And I'm working on a Lakota Atlas project with several individuals. It's a partnership with Red Cloud Indian School and Racing Magpie. And a lot of that was surrounding appropriate access to knowledge, yet also defining how we share it through GIS. And that's an example of, where tribes really need to think about access to data when so much of Google Maps mapping, visualization of lands is fairly openly accessible, but what aspects of it can be managed and maintained by the tribe? I know that I cannot remember his name up in Cheyenne River. I've met him some years ago, and he was sort of in charge of that when Donna Ray Peterson was there. But for here, when I came into the archives, I realized on a permanent appointment, there were no policies. And this is not unusual when I have talked to several folks that often have a combination of a library archive setting or perhaps a small governmental tribal archives. And excuse me. And so myself and another individual, Requa West, she was at the time an undergraduate in biological sciences in the math and science department at Oglala Lakota College. And she and I began having conversations about policy. And we nerded out and studied National Park Service policy, a number of other institutions, including School of Mines, and looking at their policy because we knew we needed to encompass natural history collections as well. And so by 2015, we had drafted a 60-page collection policy manual because we knew that we weren't going to get anywhere with who we were defining as partners and stakeholders across, whether it was through the tribe, through the county, through the state, and federally. And so we met with really terrific folks that we had a lot of respect for, like Sally Shelton, who was managing the collections at School of Mines, and had, they had significant collections, especially, paleontology, geology there, that they were discussing repatriation of back to the Oglala Sioux tribe, because as you know, a portion of our lands encompass the Badlands, of South Dakota. And sorry about that. And so with all of that in mind, and thinking about the long history of dispossession of paleontological, geological, and other types of resources that we don't necessarily align with a cultural or linguistic or records-centric archives, we realized that was a part of it. And so I'm going to pause for a moment and let little one out so I don't have all that going on. Just a moment.
Okay. So while she's pausing and taking care of the local scene there, if you have questions, and sometimes when you're on the spot, it's a little bit hard to remember what there were. So maybe make a note or something to come back and have this conversation.
I'm back.
Okay. So I was just thinking to explore the how can you say the difficulty, because we're talking about policy, and sometimes when we come in, we receive a policy and it might be 2 pages and it might be 2,000 pages. We can underestimate how difficult it can be to make a policy that is going to stay in place for a while. Because if you have policies that are always changing, then it's sometimes counterproductive. But it can be very difficult, I would think, to like have a policy that has the overview and long-term view of like, well, what is it that you want to accomplish with the policy, and who's on board with that policy, and who are the stakeholders in that policy making. So can you talk a little bit about your view about how you come about some kind of policy regarding the care and sharing of those artifacts?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it was a real education for us to write, a 60-page document, because we wanted to clearly define who our partners and stakeholders are. And from there, then we thought we would be able to sort of enact additional protections, because there are a lot of scientists and otherwise who felt like they didn't have to go through anyone. And while the tribe had a research and review board, very few people even today are aware of it, and that anyone wanting to conduct research needed to present their proposal for review. We're significantly large land base, so folks just come in and they want to be the first published conducting research on such and such specimen, or something like that. So all of that, us doing the research and writing of it as a single document was one thing. And then we had to parse out individual policies and procedures to pass through our board of trustees, which was extensive review. And that took the better part of a full year and a half to do. And then we began to connect more closely with the tribe. And by late 2017, we finally had an MOU with the tribe that had never existed before, but that would be that we would be the tribal repository. I had found a resolution that recognized the college as being the NAGPRA, the Native American Graves and Repatriation Act, representative for the tribe, but then nothing after that. And so I knew that I had a few items in our collection that seemed to have come from another museum, or perhaps a federal agency that just passed it along in a box with, minimal documentation. And so we're really excited and proud of having a formal MOU with the tribe, including the forms that are required, that show the transfer from the tribe to the college, and that the college is not assuming ownership in that traditional sense. We're simply caretakers. We are caretaking what is repatriated to the tribe, and that is what we do. So that is a separate, whole entity and collection. And I communicate closely with the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer and the 5th member for the tribe, because that's where it all started, was that person that often is sort of like a sergeant at arms type of role with the tribe, but they're often a person that is very culturally focused and often contacted about what is being, someone wants to return something that they found in their family's trunk. It could be something like that, or it could be a federal agency that seized something that isn't even connected or aware of NAGPRA. Or it could be through a formal channel. For example, we did have a voluntary repatriation from France a few years ago that was sent to the tribe, and then that came to the tribal, what we have defined as the tribal repository. So we have that role as well, and that has also spurred on some of that discussion, Leniko, about that sovereignty, that management. And it isn't, it goes even beyond data and metadata, which is critically important when we think about land management and other types of knowledge that's out there. But it does encompass what we feel also is some of the physical objects and artifacts that have been returned. We had a significant repatriation that was celebrated in a very, in a traditional manner on the anniversary of the Wounded Knee Massacre, which is, December 29th. And we're going to have another prayer ceremony with that specific collection at Oglala Lakota College on Saturday, March 25th. And so it is sort of a unique role that is a bit different than, say, a mainstream, archives or museum. We sort of have to think about, well, who are our primary stakeholders? Who are our partners that we can reach out to for support? And so we've defined specific programs and agencies within the tribe that are our primary stakeholders, for example, as well as other state agencies that we would work with related to that cultural patrimony that might be being returned to us to caretake. It really goes back to knowledge across all formats, and it is really a dense and complex subject to discuss. But we've definitely, this is really recent, as you hear. We're revising that MOU right now because Oglala Sioux Tribe has full turnover of tribal governance, meaning the tribal president, vice president, and the council. It is a full rather than a staggered turnover every 2 years. So we have significant challenges in maintaining relationships and educating new council members or the new tribal president about what we're doing. And so right now, the new tribal president, Frank Starr, comes out, is incredibly supportive and involved. And so we're really excited about that. It's really positive. And I just think this is going to continue to grow and evolve in how tribes began to look at caretaking their knowledge, which falls under that umbrella of data sovereignty.
Right. I see Jane Healy, she has her mic off. Did you have a question, Jane? You might just have her mic off or on. Well,
I'd
I
like
guess
to
not.
ask another question.
Oh, okay. Go
I have
ahead.
an open spot here.
Yeah.
I've had the privilege of working on my parents' reservations, and that's Sandy Rock and Cheyenne River. And what I found to be most difficult in those settings was the monetary resources that were necessary to protect the sovereignty of any data, whatever form it was, and also the economic resources that were associated with those conditions. And I wondered whether or not, since I go places sometimes where I'm asked to pay a certain amount of money to be able to have access to certain things, I wondered whether or not the OLC had taken upon themselves a way to build the ongoing protection of these materials.
Well, I realized when I walked into an extremely small budget of $1,000 a year for supplies, and we all know or can guess that archival and museum specific supplies simply to create mounts and supports for objects, for example, are really expensive. My biggest concern as I came in, because this is a question I love asking our students who come, K-12, college, what do you think is the most valuable, collection that we have? What do you think? And, they're looking at beautiful regalia or other, quilled or beaded or carved items that are on display. And I answer, it is our audio and audiovisual material. And so when I say that, and that our oldest recordings that we actually did a digital repatriation with the Library of Congress and National Endowment for the Arts back in 2017, of recordings that date back to 1896. I'll quickly quiz students, how old are those? It's incredibly humbling to listen to these recordings that are that old, and yet the songs are instantly familiar to those of us who might be involved with day-to-day cultural or ceremonial events. And so with those assets, that is a whole monster in and of itself to figure out how to maintain over time. Because many of you know, where are your 8-tracks? Where are your VHS tapes? Where are your cassettes or even your CDs? I have had many CDs that do not open now. And so when we think about MP3s, MP4s, WAV files, JPEGs, TIFFs, those all refer to either visual or audio formats. I think that there's sort of an assumption, because we all consume them so often, they're fine.
Yep.
Well, I think everybody thought cassettes and DVDs would be fine forever too, and they're not.
Yeah, especially the gold CDs. I remember people selling the gold CDs because the gold lasted longer than the other stuff.
And
But
they don't.
And well, the other thing is they didn't mention, though, people might start making CD players, so, and then what?
Right, or DVD players.
Yeah.
And so, so what I have to think about is I've got a really small budget. So what am I going to do? I'm going to write for grants. And I have written a number of grants to National Endowment for the Humanities, which has been the most supportive entity for us. I have interfaced with other entities, National Historic Preservation. We're doing a grant specific to Wild West show history and connecting that Wild West show history that is all over the world in ephemera and artifacts and stories and so on back to the community to expand those stories. So that is funded with National Archives, NARA, and the Mellon Foundation. I've also worked with the Doris Duke Foundation, who also partners with Mellon Foundation. So we are dependent on grants to caretake and hopefully maintain these assets. I had a long meeting with our IT. We just got cloud storage last year because I was frantically maintaining assets on multiple physical devices, large storage devices, bigger than a flash drive, to if a power surge came through and hit my computer, then maybe these physical drives that have a few terabytes of storage on them will be okay. Through NEH, I obtained a large network storage device, a NAS, and to manage a lot of the video that we've had a TV station that used to air through a wall through Golden West Telecommunications. So we had tons of footage, local community events, games, etc. And so you think, oh, well, that stuff is always available too. No, we've got to manage, at least in mirror form, if not eventually inching toward an additional copy in a semi-dark or dark digital storage space through the cloud, to ensure that these important recordings that are very specific are maintained. It's a constant, I worry constantly.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
technology changes constantly, so it's a never-ending challenge.
well, to that point, there are some other ways, and I'm just throw these out there to see if these are considered and what the considerations were. You can make, for example, if you have lots of pictures or pictures that you could take of artifacts with some notations, it is possible to make, let's say, limited copy of rather, let's say, large format books, which will give you, a lot of make available lots of details and things like that, where you don't have to print like 1,000 or 2,000, 10,000 books. You can print as few as one, but they would be hard copy collections of your collections, so that in addition to having it someplace where all you have to have is a big solar flare, and a lot of this stuff is, you think we had problems today, wait till we have one of those. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So if you had, like, I'm just wondering if you guys ever considered like doing things like that and then putting those things in something, let's say, similar to a time capsule, like, in other words, a nitrogen kind of thing. So especially the ones that are important, and you just have them under seal and just know where they are in case something like that happens, and you can, they're not likely to go away with a solar flare. Just as an example, there are other things too.
Yeah, it is, I'm lucky that I do have one other full-time staff member, and we do try to bring in students and interns for opportunities, but that project in and of itself will take a significant amount of time.
Sure. I was just curious if it's a kind of thing that you thought about and you say, okay, we need these resources, and this is what we're going to do to get them, or I'm more interested in the consideration than the actual thing that it's done or not.
Right. What is interesting too with federal funders is they assume that that if you're writing for the money, you have the capacity to do the work. And you don't necessarily have the staff or the equipment to do all the work. The work needs to be done, like, say, migration from old formats to digital formats, and that there be more support to outsource to entities that have that equipment, have the staff capacity to just get that done. Because what we do is, while we'd like to be able to just focus entirely on preservation and conservation work, we have an obligation to our community to be available for genealogical research, to support our students through presentations, to the many things that we spend a fair amount of time on. We have some significant collections that authors have donated within the past 2 years that we've been busy processing, because they're very specific to the history of Pine Ridge. And we're really grateful that those authors realized, wow, I benefited to some degree for the work that I did to write about, say, the death of Raymond Yellow Thunder or Dewey Beard, or other individuals that are known and respected, Black Elk. Those authors have donated their research collections, so we've been busy processing those. And so we wish we had more time to focus on what you're speaking to, and I'd love to talk with you about that further.
Sure.
Because often what we do, and what many archivists, we have a monthly archivists meeting of archivists across the state, that we meet monthly and kind of, discuss, what are you dealing with, or what do you have a question about? And it's always involving visibility, access, and usability. That's what I always write to and think of, is that we want our collections to be more visible, therefore accessible and usable. It's just something that we're thinking about all the time. So of course, say digitization is a part of that, preservation and conservation. So then we can photograph, that item or that collection and make it visible. So an artist can come or can find us online, find the different examples of quill work that we have, and then make time to come perhaps engage with it in person, because of course, that just doesn't compare to a picture. We're really excited about ways that we can support the life in our collection, so to speak, and that we're more willing to incur a little more wear and tear if we have descendants who can engage and touch and handle something and realize, wow, I can see where this was repaired. I can see this was added later, say to a bustle or to something like that. And then it becomes a very, critical teaching tool that we're really excited and proud about having available, much like a relative pulling something out of a box that was under the bed and being able to tell a story about it, explain it, explain how it was used, or which relatives had maybe added something to it that's part of the story, say, of that bustle or something like that. So that's sort of what we're aiming to do, making reproduction items available as teaching collections.
Sure.
Things like that.
Right. And, that leads into a question about the relevance to this, because I think sometimes we can overlook that it's not just sort of like making pretty pictures or something like that, that it has a lot of deeper connotations or meaning for people. And there are practical uses in terms of the human story. And I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about the value of this collection, other than just, crows collect things too, but these, I think, have more meaning. So can you talk to that a little bit about the meaning and value of these things in terms of the human story?
Whew. Speaking, say, to traditional and contemporary understandings of species that existed but no longer exist, and there is paleontological evidence of them. And I think there might be an assumption by, visiting scientific researchers that assume that no one here has stories about those species, and that's untrue. And we think about the documented evidence around that and connecting story and understandings to whether they're everyday objects, whether they're sets of, say, older studies on Indian education from the 60s that someone could access and connect to their research now, and then obtain, some amazing funding for. That there are specific stories to district histories that might support how that district wants to change its name from the last name of a boss farmer to a headman. And if there's some of that evidence in our archives that supports that work that starts on, a small village, then, larger community of that district, to then present to the tribe, and then that might filter up to the state, that community has changed its name. I live near, just outside of Kyle, South Dakota, for example. And so locally, the Kyle community has proposed that the name be changed to Little Wound to celebrate that leader. We already have Little Wound School that is named after him. And it's things like that, that archival evidence that exists through various forms of documentation, whether through other elders who conducted specific histories in the 70s or 80s because they were campaigning for construction of a museum. It could just so many aspects of the historical record, that there are ethnobotany collections that students can access and study while they're taking a class called, traditional plants. And they're connecting that knowledge, not just within our boundaries of the reservation, but with the Black Hills within the state, and looking at opportunities then that those students, I know of one who's attending SDSU right now, who's very attuned to traditional plant knowledge. So what's available here in our community for that student to also connect with and study, and then figure out who might partner with him on a state level to expand that research. So I feel like we could serve in so many capacities. The other thing is I always talk to, well, why would you attend Oglala Lakota College? You could go to Black Hills State, and you could go to USD, and maybe you will. They're terrific institutions. But if you start here and you understand more about who you are and where you come from, and how are you going to do that at OLC? What's different about OLC taking English 1 or taking college algebra, and then doing that at Western Dakota Tech or at Augustana? I'm just naming all these institutions. I've visited them all. I ingratiated myself, but into their collections to better understand how they do what they do. But, accessing primary sources and understanding the difference there, that knowledge is critically important to them learning how to conduct research, whether it's family history and genealogy, whether it's plant knowledge, whether it is land-based issues. All those things come back to who is caretaking those primary sources. Well, I don't know if that answers at all what you're talking about, because it was a really big question.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I ask big questions like that. But I would like, in those last few minutes, if you could just put in the chat ways that people could contact you, because I think we have lots more to talk about, and I hope you will come back. I hope you will come back, because there are so many other questions I had, but unfortunately we're kind of out of time. So is it possible for you, I don't know, maybe if Colby could put in some contact information? I can imagine there are a few people who would want to come out and see your collection and to get to know more about what you're doing. I know I have lots of questions and would love to come out and see more of what kind of things you're doing. So thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you all of our esteemed panel here for joining us. I hope you'll tell your friends and come back and join us again here right at 10:30 at the same place, same station, and get on our mailing list. Make sure you're somehow connected so we can share information with you. We got lots more to talk about. Thank you very much, Tawa.
Oh, this was wonderful. And yes, I could go on and on, but please reach out to me. I make myself available as much as possible. I am working from home today, but please, email me, call me. I accidentally sent some contact info just to one participant today, mistakenly, because of course I was doing it quickly. But if you visit olc.edu and find us on the menu, we're under library, and you can find our archives tab. And we have digital exhibits to go through within our Mukadu platform. And it's really exciting that we have that. But let me look here. Everyone see my contact info?
Yeah.
Did that come through?
Yes,
Okay.
it's in the chat. And if people will go down to the bottom, it's in right next to the little smiley face, you'll see 3 dots. You click on that and you can save the chat. You don't have to necessarily try to type it out again. Well,
Excellent.
that means we've run out of time. Thank you very much. And we'll see all of you same time, same station.
Thank
Or
you
as they
so
used to-
much, Lawrence. I really enjoyed this.
All right.
Lanico, Betty, everybody. But please reach out to me.
All
I
right.
always think of questions later on. So I wish you all a good day, and thank you so much for taking the time to join today. I really
All right.
enjoyed this. Thank you so much.